and thank you for joining us for another edition of Afternoon Teach with the Vaccines for Children's program. Afternoon Teach with VFC is a new webinar series offered to all providers participating in the California VFC program. Always held at noon for an hour, these free online webinars will cover a variety of immunization topics to help in your daily immunization work. Today's Teach webinar will focus on what to do after you've purchased a digital data logger. The first webinar in this series is Best Practices for Temperature Monitoring with Digital Data Loggers. Your facilitators for today are Michelle Barkas and Steve Fantine.
We do not anticipate any problems today viewing the webinar, but just in case you have some technical difficulties, please email Cecilia LaRue for assistance. Throughout this webinar, there will be a couple of polling questions, and we're asking that you please complete these questions. And although you are in listen-only mode, you have the ability to ask questions. During the webinar, you can type your question in the chat box, and it will go to all of the panelists here, and then you just click Send, and then someone here will read your question to the panelists at the end of the webinar.
The California Vaccines for Children's program does not endorse any particular product, vendor, or manufacturer. Images shown are for demonstration purposes only.
At the conclusion of the webinar today, you should be able to understand the correct configuration settings for your temperature monitoring devices, better known as a digital data logger, learn how to respond to out-of-range temperatures, know the daily temperature monitoring best practices, and understand the importance of downloading temperature data files and analyzing reports.
In the 2018 program participation at a glance, you'll find additional information that states each device must have a valid certificate of calibration, must meet VFC specifications, each site must have at least one backup data logger in case the primary device is being calibrated or breaks down. Data loggers must be used to monitor temperatures during vaccine transport and at approved mass vaccination clinics. This means the use of traditional min-max thermometers to monitor vaccine storage unit temperatures are no longer acceptable.
There are many data loggers on the market today, each with their own set of guides and instructions. This webinar will not cover how to operate individual models, but will cover VFC requirements for compliance. It is imperative that practices and clinics are familiar with their particular temperature monitoring device. Make sure you configure the settings for use according to VFC program requirements and best practices. When necessary, refer to the manufacturer's product guide to learn how to use the device. And we found that there are many helpful videos on YouTube. If questions arise, call the vendor support contact number for all questions regarding setup, functionality, or configuration.
The California VFC program began implementing CDC's guidance on Fahrenheit temperature range for storing refrigerated vaccines earlier this year. The recommended Fahrenheit temperature range is between 36 and 46 degrees Fahrenheit, previously between 35 degrees and 46 degrees Fahrenheit. The Celsius temperature range between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius remains unchanged. Knowing these ranges aids when setting alarm limits with your digital data loggers.
We've provided a quick review on the requirements for using data loggers and the importance of learning how to use the model in your practice. Let's take some time to review the requirements for configuring the logger for use. So depending on a device that you've selected that you're using in your office, you have more than one option as to how to program it for initial use and again after downloading data. Your options could range from automatic or immediate, manual, which typically means there's a push button start. There are also models that will allow you to delay the start as well as continuously take readings. In the last box on the left-hand side, you can see this particular model will give you 3 options. You can download and continue, you could download and restart the device, and you could also download and stop the device from taking readings. Considerations to keep in mind: the distance from the vaccine storage unit to the locations for downloading data, staffing, and your clinic flow.
Let's take a moment to consider some issues with connecting the device. Some digital data loggers on the market require the connecting and disconnecting the probe from the device in order to obtain and download temperature data files. Ensure the probe is connected and disconnected properly. Here are some examples of probes not connected properly on the left side of your screen. The probe should always be connected properly to prevent inaccurate temperature readings or errors as illustrated here. Some data loggers sync with a desktop or wireless connection date calendar. Other devices require you to manually set the date and time as you see here in this image. Setting the correct date and time is crucial when trying to determine when temperatures went out of range and how long those temperatures were recorded.
We strongly recommend identifying the vaccine storage unit when you configure your data logger. Create some type of naming convention that will be easy for staff to remember for filing and retrieving of these reports. The serial number in some instances may be the only name that will be listed for the data logger. Here we've provided some possible examples of identifying the vaccine storage unit. Injection room number 2, fridge unit in the front, and in the next example it's freezer, and I'm going to guess that that's the PIN number and the location in the building where this particular unit is. In any rate, we're hoping that the name of the vaccine unit should also be listed on the VFC temperature log, as in this example. The VFC program gives providers the option of choosing which temperature scale they'd like to use for all vaccine storage units, Celsius or Fahrenheit. After deciding which temperature scale your practice will utilize, make sure that the VFC temperature log selected matches the correct temperature scale for your temperatures. Doing this prevents the need to convert temperatures, a practice that we do not recommend.
After reviewing CDC's Storage and Handling Toolkit, released in June of 2016, we adopted setting the minimum recording intervals for 30 minutes. Keep in mind, it is okay to select an interval that is less than 30 minutes.
In case you may not be aware, there is a job aid, IMM 1206, that provides information needed to configure the alarm settings, along with other helpful information for configuring the data logger according to California VFC requirements. For the refrigerator, the alarm should be set to trigger any temps at or below 35.9 Fahrenheit or 1.9 Celsius, and then again at or above 46.1 Fahrenheit or 8.1 Celsius. For the freezer, set the low alarm at or below minus 58.1 Fahrenheit or minus 50.1 Celsius, and at or above 5.1 Fahrenheit or 14.9 degrees Celsius.
Let's switch gears and look at temperature monitoring best practices. In this next section, we'll review best practices for monitoring temperatures. Here is our first polling question. Twice daily temperature monitoring helps to prevent loss of expensive vaccines and the potential need for revaccination of patients by identifying out-of-range temperatures quickly and allowing immediate corrective action. Temperature monitoring is dependent on which of these four keys? Trained staff, reliable equipment, complete documentation, or immediate and appropriate actions for any out-of-range temperatures.
So the polling question is up, and you have approximately 15 seconds to complete this first polling question. Okay, the poll is now closed. It has ended. And it looks like overwhelmingly everyone agreed that actually all of these are key steps for temperature monitoring. Making sure you have trained staff, reliable equipment, making sure you complete the documentation, especially in ink, and respond immediately and make appropriate actions for any out-of-range temperatures.
Ensure vaccine unit temperatures are recorded on VFC temperature logs that match the data logger settings. Monitor and record current, minimum, and maximum temperatures in vaccine storage units twice each day. Inspect temperatures, then place the device back to recording temperatures. Download and analyze temperature data files at the end of every 2-week period. However, you may need to download files more often if an excursion has been identified. After downloading temperature data files, make sure your data logger is set back in place and recording temperatures again. Look for temperature trends that might indicate performance issues with vaccine storage units.
We wanted to give you a couple of tips when dealing with alarms. And the first tip we actually want to give you is please do not ignore the alarm alerts that you get on your device. If temperature alarms go off repeatedly, do not disconnect the alarm or the probe from the device until it can be confirmed that it is a false alarm. Some of the things that you could do to check to see if this is a false alarm is check the storage unit door, take another look at your power supply, check the thermostat settings on your storage unit. And then another helpful tip, make sure you have the alarm limits set properly. If the alarms continue, contact the VFC call center for assistance.
So, what do we do if we have out-of-range temperatures? There is a likelihood of encountering out-of-range temperatures when using digital data loggers. When temperature excursions occur, don't panic. Take immediate and appropriate actions for all out-of-range temperatures. If you forget what to do, follow the instructions that are provided on the VFC temperature log. Just a reminder, supervisors must ensure that appropriate action has been taken for all out-of-range temperatures.
So you've had a long and productive day at the clinic, and now it's time to make one last check on the vaccines before leaving for the day. On the active digital display, you see the alarm icon. You record the current, minimum, and maximum temperatures. You check check the box indicating an alarm was triggered and record the SHOTS ID number. But we don't really tell you how you got to this step or how you get to this point with documenting this information on the VFC temperature log. So we're going to spend a little time referring to the best steps or the process steps in doing this. At the top box, you see where it says clear the min and the max and any alarm symbols. Of course, by now you've already documented all of this information on the VFC temperature log. You want to place on the vaccine storage unit, do not use the vaccine sign, and alert your supervisor. Download the temperature data files or report, depending on what your data logger does or its functionality. You want to look for any excursions that must be reported. You will then document those excursions immediately via SHOTS or at SHOTS via MyVFC Vaccine. You want to make sure you save all the electronic files, because this is a file you didn't usually save in the past, as well as the VFC temperature logs for 3 years. And if you haven't already done so, you want to return the data logger back to that storage unit and ensure that it's recording. And this would be the action steps that you would take each time you have an out-of-range temperature, or I should say you have an alarm symbol on your digital display.
Analyzing reports can be a challenge for some. Now let's spend some time discussing how to analyze reports generated from your digital data logger.
Downloading and saving temperature data reports or files is a requirement, which might explain why we constantly say to staff that you should become very familiar with the different reports and the functionality of your particular data logger. Oftentimes, though, people keep asking us, what do we mean by downloading, since this is a new practice? Downloading simply means to transfer data. Digital data loggers meeting VFC requirements have the functionality to transfer recorded data from the device to another device that can receive and save the data to a file that you've given a name to. Simply stated, temperature data files or reports can be saved to a computer, a smart device, or even a cloud, in the cloud with a cloud account. In this example, the possibilities are you could be using a USB device or interface to transfer the data. You could be using a card reader. And in some instances, you may have Bluetooth capability to send your data to a computer. Knowing exactly how long vaccines have been out of range helps to determine the viability of the vaccine for continued use in patients. So let's get back to this requirement with the reports. We just explained the importance of making sure you download and save the data every 2 weeks or sooner if you have a temperature excursion. You want to make sure you review for any out-of-range temperatures. And you want to save, again, you want to save all VFC forms and electronic files for 3 years.
We know that in the past, you may not have had to download data files. Now, downloading temperature data files and reports is a minimum of twice per month, or sooner if a temperature alarm went off. This is a VFC program requirement. Data downloads should be stored in an electronic file folder on your computer. Data files should be named so that they can be easily identified by supervisors and other key practice staff.
There is a wealth of information that can be gained from reviewing and analyzing reports or the data files generated from a data logger. We're going to take a look at a couple of those reports so that we can see what we can learn from these different reports. The first thing that stands out for me with this particular report that we're reviewing is the word alarm in red. indicating that there's an out-of-range temperature that was recorded. When I review the first box, I can see which staff person created this particular report. When I go and look at the report information section, when I look to the left, I can see when this report was generated. It was generated on March 22nd of this year at approximately 3:07. I know the name and model of this particular data logger. When I look to the right, I can see when this data logger was originally configured, again, when the data was downloaded. I can see that the logging interval is 30 minutes, which is what we recommend, and that during the time it was configured until the data was downloaded, there were about 610 data points that was collected. So let's take a look at the next box. When I look to the left, again, it tells me that there was an alarm. When I look at the low and the high alarm limits, I can see that it's set according to VFC requirements. When I go and look to the right, it tells me that there were 3 low alarms that were triggered, and it also tells me how long the alarm limits were, and for this one, it was 1 hour. This particular device will let us know if during the time an alarm was triggered, if the probe was disconnected. And in this instance, this alarm, or the probe to this alarm, was not disconnected. Let's take a look at another report as well as temperature data files from another digital data logger. So when we start on the left, I can see that this particular data logger, again, is set, the alarm limits are set according to VFC requirements. I can see that the reading interval is 30 minutes. Again, that's what's recommended. I can also see how many days and hours that this data logger has been collecting data. It's 18 days and 22 hours. And when I go down a little bit further, it'll let me know if there were any alarms and for how long. And in this situation, or in this case, I know that for 45 minutes, this particular data logger was above the alarm limit. So this same data logger gives me daily summary readings of each recording. So when I go and take a look over here, I notice that after the 3rd reading, there are no more alarms. And the first thing that I can guess when I look at this is I'm wondering if I might need to do some staff training, because my first thought in this example is that the probe was not conditioned before it was actually placed in the vaccine storage unit and started recording the readings. But again, this is just what I'm speculating at this point, because as you can see, after the 2nd reading, there were no more out of alarm limits. So I would definitely want to take a look at this. So here's one more report we want you to take a look at and give you an idea of how to review or analyze the data. If you notice in the top left corner, the date that's there, it says May 9th, 2016. So, of course, a red flag is already up for me because we're in 2018. When I take a closer look at all of the temperature data that was collected, I can see on the day that this data was collected, it says May 7th, 2019. And, of course, we know 2019 has not occurred yet. So in this situation, this is, again, an opportunity to do training. I would go back to this particular device and make sure it's configured properly according to date and time. And as an added extra measure, I would double-check the alarm limits that have been set for this device as well.
Now it's time for our next polling question. Take a look at this summary report to answer the following polling questions. Is the data logger configured according to VFC requirements? Take a minute to answer.
Okay, you have about 10 more seconds.
Okay, let's move to our next question. How many days and hours were temperatures recorded?
Okay, you have approximately 10 more seconds before the poll is closed.
And our last question, how long were temperatures out of range?
And for this one, we're going to give you a little extra time because you will need to look for this one. Okay, approximately 10 seconds before the poll closes. Okay, so let's take a look and see how you guys did with these questions, because we say there's a lot that you can find in a data logger report or data files, so we know it's in there. So the first question was, is the data logger configured according to VFC requirements? And although we don't have all of the information that we're looking for, we have the bulk of the information we're looking for, and hopefully you did say yes. If you look over on the right side, you will see that the alarm limits are set according to what we ask you to set it for, according to VFC requirements. And also, I'm sorry, on the left, you can see that the recording interval is set for 30 minutes. The second question, how many days and hours were temperatures recorded? And this information was actually located in two separate places in the recorded data box. And hopefully you saw that that was 18 days and 22 hours. And then the last and final question, how long were temperatures out of range? And hopefully you saw in the lower right corner that it was 45 minutes. And for a little added measure, the alarm was triggered on March the 8th at 5:40 in the morning. So hopefully we gave you a chance to take a look at all of the different data files that we have access to so that you can see how to review them and analyze the data that's in them. So please, if you haven't already done so, take a look at the reports that are generated from your DDL so that you can learn how to review and analyze them.
Let's take a moment to discuss the importance of the supervisor's role regarding reports. Supervisors play a vital role managing vaccines and are responsible for reviewing completed temperature logs and certifying that staff are monitoring and documenting temperatures according to VFC program requirements. For the California VFC program, a supervisor is someone other than the person recording the temperatures, and they must review, certify, and sign completed temperature logs at the end of each 15-day reporting period. Reviews should go quickly unless there are repeated temperature excursions. Reviewing temperature logs allows supervisors to identify any training gaps. But in order to do this, supervisors must be knowledgeable about proper temperature monitoring. For additional guidance, refer to the Monitoring Storage Unit Temperatures lesson for more training. If repeated storage and handling incidents occur or potential vaccine storage unit performance issues arise, contact the regional VFC field representative or the VFC call center to resolve any issues before vaccines are damaged.
As with any equipment, we suggest that you routinely keep an eye on your data logger. We ask that you do a regular routine check of the cables. You want to make sure that they're working properly. You want to make sure that the probe is not damaged and that it's plugged in properly. We also recommend that you replace the batteries on some type of regular schedule. We suggested here daylight savings time. And also, in case you're not aware, one of the specifications for having a digital data logger is that it does provide a low battery indicator on the device, and it should be on the digital display. This is going to be very helpful later on because we've had a couple of calls where staff have called in from a particular clinic because they're unable to download any readings or any information from their data logger, and that's because the battery has died and they forgot to pay close attention to the low battery indicator. If a data logger is dropped, hit against the side of a storage unit, or potentially damaged in any other way, verify its accuracy against another calibrated data logger. If there is any question at all about accuracy, have the device calibrated tested or replace it.
We'd like to take a moment and share just a few of the many resources that are available at easyiz.org to help you that we have discussed in this webinar. 2018 Program Participation Requirements at a Glance, IMM 1240. How to Record Temperatures, IMM 1029. Data Logger Setup and Use, IMM 1206. And of course, the VFC Provider Program Operations Manual, IMM 1248.
This is the final slide in the webinar, and we wanted to leave you with some key points to remember.
The correct configuration settings for your temperature monitoring device ensures vaccines are monitored as required. Having a digital data logger does not eliminate the need to check temperatures twice a day. Always address out-of-range temperatures immediately upon discovery. And although this is a new practice, remember you have to download and save temperature data files and reports. It's a requirement for participating in the VFC program. Resources are available at www.easyiz.org. We'd like to thank you for attending this webinar. We're now going to open it up for questions and answers. We do have some people in the room that are subject matter experts, one from the call center and then the chief of the program. We're going to make every effort to answer all of your questions. If we should run out of time, please send your questions to the email listed here with the following subject line. So let's start with the questions that came in through the chat box. We have several questions. Okay, I'm taking a look. Okay, that's not related to the webinar. Is this the same WebEx as the introduction to digital data loggers offered in February 2018? No, this is not the same. This one is different in the sense that we talk a little bit more or stress the importance of making sure you configure your data logger correctly, understanding how to handle alarms, and the importance of understanding that you have to download and save your data files.
Okay, one of the questions that's come in is, what is the SHOT ID?
So the SHOT ID is the report number assigned to all SHOT reports that are submitted. The SHOT ID can be found on the report/view excursions button. So when you click on that, it's going to take you to a page of all of your submitted reports and all of your incomplete reports, and each one of those will start with the SHOT ID. When you submit your report, if it is a non-excursion and they tell you thank you for documenting, it will display on the results and instructions page. If you are instructed to contact the vaccine manufacturers, the SHOT ID will display on the thank you page when you've submitted your report.
Thank you. Another question, where can we see the battery indicator? Well, hopefully you will see it on your digital display on your data logger. I don't know exactly where it'll be because I don't know what model you have, but I've been finding the battery indicator typically in the top left or top right corner of the device. But again, there are hundreds of data loggers out there, and I'm not familiar with every single one of them. So you might want to go back and look at your manufacturer's handbook, and they may be able to give you some more information.
On a related note, I just noticed another question that just came in related to batteries. How often should I be changing the batteries? And I know it says on a regular schedule. Once again, like Michelle just reiterated, I think taking a look at your instruction for your data logger, your instruction manual, is key. We often recommend from the program to actually take a look at changing batteries approximately every 6 months. The VFC program usually, when it's time for daylight savings time changes, we actually include a recommendation for you to also check the batteries on your devices as well as a good reminder.
Okay, next question. Do we still have to clear the data loggers twice a day?
I think a lot of that depends on the model of data logger that you have. There are some data loggers that have a daily min-max. If your data logger is one of the loggers that has a daily min-max, you can't clear your min-max temperatures. If your device does have the option for clearing the temperatures, yes, you should be clearing it after you document the temperatures on your temperature log in the morning and again in the afternoon.
Another question. Have you found that one brand of data loggers is more accurate than others? We seem to have excursions more than one brand than another. And that's kind of a tough question to answer. We don't endorse any particular brand or model digital data logger. We do know that they are much more accurate than the previously used min-max thermometers. If you are having a lot of excursions, I would go back and double check and take a look at the slide that we provided, what you could do if you're having alarms. I don't know if you've been able to try those troubleshooting steps. Another thing that you could do is you could get your backup data logger and put it in the unit and start comparing the temperatures. And if you're still having problems with having excursions, I would give the call center a call here. It's the VFC call center. And I would also reach out to the manufacturer and see if maybe there might be something wrong with that particular data logger. Is it recommended to check all units' data loggers if we have an excursion in one unit?
Not necessarily. Thank you for the question. If you have an excursion in one unit and for some reason you found that there's something happened to the power or a circuit and you have more than one unit in that room, yes, you might actually need to check other units. But if you have multiple units in different stores and one of them is alarming, then you just check that unit. That's what we actually recommend for you to check morning and afternoon, so you can check those. And nowadays, we have more and more data loggers that are moving to web cloud downloading of the data and text alerts. That's actually a very convenient feature for your clinic to have when you consider getting your units recalibrated. Might be a good feature to have because you can be anywhere and receive a text, and it will indicate which units are out of range. Or you may be able to log into one portal and be able to see all of your units that may be within temperature or out of temperature. So that is certainly a very nice feature.
Thank you. And this is the last question we'll take from the chat box, and then we'll open up the phone lines. Every 2 weeks, do we fax the logs, or do we just download in our PC? And I love this question, and I hope this will help out a lot of staff out there. Please download and save your files to a computer. There's no need for you to fax anything to us. We want you to save that data. We want you to save it in a way so that it's accessible to all staff, and even those of us from the California VFC program. Thank you for your questions in the chat. So we'd like to go ahead and open up the phone lines.
And if you would like to ask a question, you may do so by pressing *1. And our first question comes from Lucy. Your line is now open.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I thought I have to go online and check something. That's the reason I was like writing you. Hello?
What is it that you need to check?
I have to check something online in my email because I thought there is something I have to take a look.
We'll be happy to take your question. If you were trying to submit it via chat, we'll be more than happy if you have a question for us right now.
Hello?
Alrighty, so if you have a question for us, feel free to submit that via chat, and we can move on to the next question.
And our next question comes from Narli Ala. Your line is now open.
Hello, how may we assist you?
Hi, no question.
Okay.
Thank you for attending the webinar.
One moment for our next question. And our next question comes from Marley Stella. Your line is now open.
If there is an alarm, but the current, the low, and the high temperatures are within normal limits, would that just be considered a false alarm, or what can be the cause for that?
So if your current, your minimum, and your maximum are all in range and you have an alarm and the thermometer's memory was not cleared so you aren't just, so that you are seeing the actual minimum and maximum temperatures, I would follow up with the device manufacturer. There have been some data loggers that have alarmed even though there have been no out-of-range temperatures, and that had to do with the way that the device was set up.
Okay.
And that's a perfect segue, Megan, because another thing that could happen is that maybe your alarms have been set up within the ranges of temperatures. So they may be set up within 36 to 46, and you will get an alarm that the temperatures are within range.
Okay.
So check your temperature setting as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And our next question comes from Anna. Your line is now open.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, my question is, I just became the vaccine coordinator, and I've been actually printing out the data loggers, and I've been putting them in a folder, not in the computer. Would that still be okay?
Well, I'm just going to ask you this as a quick question. Do you have the ability to scan those readings or that report into the computer so that it's saved electronically?
Yes.
Because that's what we strongly recommend. Save all forms and VFC, save all electronic forms and all VFC forms for 3 years. So if there's a way for you to scan those documents or get those documents onto some type of USB drive and then save them onto a computer, then you will be compliant.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And our next question comes from Brenda. Your line is now open.
Hi, I just had a question about after downloading it onto the computer, do we have to erase the memory from the USB?
Yes, you do want to delete those readings because when you restart the data logger, you want to get fresh readings. So you want to make sure when you download the data, you save it with a naming convention that everyone will know that that is that particular file for that unit and the time period. You want to save that, and then you want to restart the data logger so that you're getting fresh readings.
Okay, I see. So the memory in the USB will get erased after we download it?
Well, it depends on the device. I'm giving you a general explanation, but the main thing we want you to understand is that once you download that data and you restart that data logger, you don't want to be picking up the old temperatures that was already recorded.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And our next question comes from Lisa. Your line is now open.
I just have a question. When I download the report, it shows latitude and longitude numbers. What is that for?
Okay, what's really great about these reports that are generated from the data logger, in some instances, the information means absolutely nothing to us. There are some data loggers out there, the reports will give you the ambient temperature. In this instance, we're not concerned with the latitude or the longitude of the device. We're more concerned with the readings that were recorded from the device. And we're also wanting to know if that's possible because some data loggers do not have a summary report. You just have the daily readings that were recorded. The one thing we want to make sure you have the ability to do with your reports, if you do have out-of-range temperatures, that you're able to calculate how long those vaccines were out of range.
We also had a couple of questions that came in through the chat when it was on the data logger report screen where it showed the Fahrenheit minutes. And several people wanted to know, what are the Fahrenheit minutes, and does it matter?
That's a question I can't answer. Can you guys answer that one?
Yeah, I think that's kind of along the same lines of what you were just talking about, the longitude and the latitude. Data loggers actually have been in many industries, including industrial industries, agricultural industry, commercial, industries, even Costco and all of those groceries have been actually using data loggers to record temperatures of either products, buildings, you name it. And so there's a lot of information that is included in these reports because they're not industry specific for vaccines. It's one use of the data logger. So a lot of the times our reports may include a lot of information that are extrinsic to the needs of what we need. And I think, that's why we go through all of this for information of what information is important for you to focus on their reports.
All right, thank you.
And our next question comes from Gigi. Your line is now open. Your line is now open. You may ask your question. Please speak as close to the phone as possible. All right. Our next question comes from Jesus. Your line is now open. You may ask your question.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Please go ahead.
All right. Alrighty. So I just want to verify this. So for VFA and VFC, if the fridge does go out of range, we do make a excursion report. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And all right, I just wanted to clarify that because that's what I was told to do. And just one more question. Just wanted to verify the refrigerator and the freezer low and high controls. So for the refrigerator, I had a low is 35.9 in Fahrenheit. The high is 46.1 degrees in Fahrenheit. For the freezer, I got for the low negative 58.1. What was the high for the freezer?
5.1 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, 5.1 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You have a good afternoon.
All right, you too.
And our next question comes from Ann. Your line is now open.
Hi. I've been told that our data loggers have been having electrical interferences and environmental interferences that are causing the data logger on our freezer to jump as high as 30 to 40 points within a tenth of a second. Is that considered normal, even though when I download it doesn't show that the temperature actually went out of range?
So we have had several models of data loggers with a similar reported issue. Most of those data loggers run off of AC power. So they have a power cord that is plugged into the wall. And what the device manufacturers have said is that this AC power can cause, they usually refer to them as spikes. And a lot of times they'll recommend moving the device. There are other times where they've said that there is static in the room that is causing the device to have those temperature, again, spikes. So it might have to do with the logger model that you guys are currently using.
So what I've been doing is we do have to plug the AC adapter in to get the readings, and that is the only time that it occurs. We have the static suppressors in place to try to help prevent that. There's no other electrical devices that are being used in that room. We've actually replaced the data logger a couple times, and it's still the same thing. So my second question is, since we are assuming that that's probably the problem and that it's not an actual excursion, is it okay to just document what's happening during those time frames and we still remain safeguarded for that? Or because from what I'm told from the manufacturers, it doesn't really seem to be a remedy for that.
And this is an interesting scenario on this device. I don't know. It's very particular to one device. This is a program in dealing with many of providers across the state. Have not heard that occurring on other devices. So I mean, I think that would be a consideration for your practice. And then I think plugging in the devices on power strips. That was one explanation that we heard, but it doesn't sound like a real explanation. So I think we're just saying that's a very strong consideration for you when you're looking at, maybe recalibrating your devices and a consideration as to why this is happening. You do want to capture that information when it happens, and if you see it, the temperature, we recommend you working with that vendor and manufacturer to try and get an explanation from them that is true, what is happening, because there is no way for you or for us to determine whether it's truly a static suppression issue or whether your refrigerator did go down or go up to those temperatures.
And if this is the particular model that I think you're referring to, the VFC program has been in contact with the manufacturer. And one of the troubleshooting tips that they've provided, and I don't know if this is always helpful, is basically to disconnect the data logger and play with all of the buttons. Turn all the buttons on, off, switch all the buttons, just basically take everything apart put everything back together, play with the switches again, and in some instances that has worked. Me personally, I can't make that decision for those of you in your practice, but considering how important these vaccines are, you might want to consider replacing that device or seeing if the manufacturer will replace that device for you.
Yeah, we have done that. I've actually replaced the device twice, actually, and I have actually done exactly what you just said. And it's basically they're just saying that, you know, it's not an excursion because it's no way that a freezer can jump from minus 21 up to positive 30 in less than a second and can jump right back. Like the whole process, it jumps back within a second.
Okay.
So I was just wanting to, I am documenting when that happens and recording it on the file and attaching notes in the comment section on the log, but I just was trying to see if there was anything else you guys suggested other than doing that.
Yeah, I think our strong encouragement would be for you to maybe look at replacing that unit with a different unit, because that is really not allowing you to monitor and record and respond to temperatures. Accordingly, there's so many different variables that you're always going to be troubleshooting for. So that would be our recommendation for you.
Okay. And do you have a specific type? I know you said you don't endorse them, but we don't want to buy another one if you know of problems with it.
We will actually post maybe some resources when we post our webinar for some information that we do have on our website, you know, of the data loggers that we have tried as part of our pilot project. Without endorsing any particular, we do have some information on our website already posted. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Michelle.
Okay. Well, that concluded our questions for this webinar. Again, we'd like to thank you for attending this webinar today. This webinar is recorded or was recorded, and we will be adding it to the EZIZ website soon in case you want to come back and take another look at it. And if you found this to be really helpful and you know your peers may not have had an opportunity to attend yesterday or today, please let them know that this will be on our website shortly. Again, thank you for attending Afternoon Teach. Have a great afternoon.